So the things that do not invalidate wudu are numbered in the textbook with you. Number one is touching a person of the opposite gender. So if a man touches a woman or vice versa, this does not impact the wudu. If she's a mahram, then this is no problem. But if she's a stranger to him, an non-mahram, this is sinful, but it doesn't break your wudu. The vast majority of scholars say that it doesn't break your wudu. Only Imam Shafi'i, the Shafi'i school, say that it does break your wudu. And why is that? Well, simply because the Imam Shafi'i went to the Quran and he found that there is an ayah which talks about wudu and about ghusl in Surah Al-Ma'idah chapter 5. Allah Azza wa Jal says, أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء. Imam Shafi'i took this word and he said, lamastum means to touch. The vast majority of schools of thought said, no, this is not touching. This deals with intercourse. And this is what the sequence of ayat al-wudu. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila salati faghsilu wujuhakum. The sequence of this ayah indicates that there are two types of ritual impurity, major and minor. The minor is lifted by performing wudu, and the major is uplifted by performing ghusl. In the case of inability to use either one, using water for either one, then you refer to dry ablution known as tayammum. And this أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء refers to having sexual intercourse. And the other reason is that the Prophet himself ﷺ used to kiss one of his wives, and he used to go to the salat without renewing his wudu. Urwa ibn Zubayr, the nephew of Mother Aisha, smiled and said, I bet you're the one who he used to kiss and go to salat without renewing his wudu. And she used to smile. May Allah be pleased with her. And this is a clear indication it does not invalidate your wudu. The Shafi'i madhab followers don't see it this way. And this is why it brings a lot of hardship to your life. When you are going around the Kaaba in tawaf, and by mistake, it's so crowded, you touch women right, left, and center. Of course, without your intention. This invalidates your wudu. Then what would I do? No, this hardship is not part of Islam. Having said that, yes, touching a woman, shaking hands with a woman who's not mahram to you is a sin. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, it is best for a man to be stabbed in his head with a needle of iron rather than touching a woman that is not permissible for him. So this is not something that any one of us would desire or want once they know the consequences over that. Now, moving on to the second issue that does not invalidate your ablution is bleeding. So a lot of the Muslims, the moment they have a cut in their bodies, I would not say while shaving, because shaving is haram, but this happens. Someone has a cut, has a wound, and he bleeds. He says that my wudu is broken. And this is not true. Imam al-Bukhari mentioned in the Sahih that the Muslims used to pray with their wounds bleeding. And Hassan al-Basri said that the Muslims so often kept on praying with blood on their clothes, which indicates two things. One, that normal blood is not najis. Human blood is not najis, as we've mentioned in a previous lesson. It's only najis when it comes out from your private part. So blood is not najis of a human being. And the process of bleeding, having a wound, pus coming out of it, this does not invalidate your wudu at all. The third thing is vomiting. And again, a lot of the Muslims think that if they vomit, they have to renew their wudu, and this is baseless. There is no evidence backing it up. Nevertheless, if you feel that you want to do this just out of cleanliness, there's no problem in that, but you do not obligate it neither upon yourself nor upon others. Number 4, eating camel's meat. And I said earlier that this is wrong. This is not a misconception. This is a fact in Islam, that eating camel's meat invalidates your wudu. However, the vast majority of scholars and schools of thought support the opinion that it does not impact your wudu. So now we are at a fork of the road. Why would the scholars differ over such an issue? Well, if you trace back the origin, you'll find that in the beginning, according to Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, he said that in the beginning, the Prophet ordered us to perform wudu from anything that was cooked with fire. So in the beginning, anything that was cooked, whether it was meat or vegetables, as long as it was touched, it was barbecued, it was grilled with fire, then you have to perform wudu from it. And then this ruling was abrogated. So it was mandatory in the beginning. Once it was abrogated, and abrogation is a nasakh. Once it was abrogated, then a new ruling came which stated that you don't have to perform wudu from anything that was touched by or with fire. Okay? Okay. Then we go to another hadith. And this hadith is in Sahih al-Imam Muslim, which is totally separate from the subject of the first hadith. In this hadith, Al-Bara ibn Azib and also Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with them all, they say that the Prophet was asked, alayhi salatu wassalam, with different wording of the hadith, of course, shall we pray in the places where a herd of sheep stays? So it's like a barn. Can we pray where sheep stay? The Prophet said, yes. Can we, or do we have to perform wudu from eating mutton meat? The Prophet said, if you wish. Okay. Then immediately the companion said, can we pray in the barn where camels stay? The Prophet said, no. And then they asked him, do we have to perform wudu from camel's meat? And the Prophet said, alayhi salam, yes. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, for example, looked at the hadith. It's highly authentic. It's in Sahih Imam Muslim. We have no doubt in the authenticity of Imam Muslim's hadiths. And then he said, okay, this is clear-cut comparison between mutton and camel's meat. Mutton, if you eat it, it's up to you. You want to perform wudu, you don't want to, your wudu is intact. But camel's meat, the Prophet said, no, you have to perform wudu. The vast majority of scholars looked at this hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah and said, yeah, but this was related to it being cooked. And Abdullah ibn Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, told us that the last thing of the Prophet's instruction and command, alayhi salatu wasalam, was not to perform wudu of which what was cooked with fire. The issue of being cooked with fire and eating camel's meat are two different separate things altogether. They're not related, none whatsoever, to one another. So You cannot simply cancel the hadith of Imam Muslim and say it does not impact your wudu. It does impact your wudu. Why? Allah knows. This is a command from Allah Azza wa Jal we have to comply with. The funny thing is that people circulate a fabricated hadith. Not that it is a weak hadith, it is not found anywhere in the books of Sunnah, in the books of hadith. Somebody just fabricated it and said it, and people, hearsay, kept on repeating it. And the hadith states that the Prophet was with his companions, may Allah be pleased with them, and they had just finished eating camel's meat, all of them. It was a feast, it was whatever. So they all ate from this meal. And one of the companions passed wind, and it was audible. So he was embarrassed, and it was immediately afterwards that the Asr prayer was called. So they all had to go and pray. And none of them needed wudu. So the Prophet ﷺ, just to save face of that person, ordered all of them to perform wudu. What kind of nonsense is this? Do you think that the Prophet ﷺ would burden his whole ummah for just a specific person who passed wind? Definitely this is nonsense, and it's unfair to claim that the Prophet would do such a thing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this hadith has no basis, none whatsoever. Number 5, doubting whether one's ablution has been invalidated. This happens a lot. I leave home, I go to work, it's time for dhuhr prayer, and I think to myself, is my wudu valid or not? This is scenario 1. Scenario 2, I think, am I in the state of wudu or not? Have I performed wudu or not? These are two different issues. If I am certain that I left home in the state of wudu, for example, I prayed Fajr, I went home, had breakfast, left to work, it's 7 o'clock. And now it's dhuhr time. I know that I left in the state of wudu. Now I'm doubting, did I answer the call of nature? Did I pass wind? Did I do anything to invalidate my wudu? These are doubts. With the certainty that I have left home in the state of wudu, the doubts evaporate and disappear. So I am in wudu, I can pray. I have no problem in that. The second scenario is different. I prayed Fajr, went to sleep. Then after an hour, woke up, had breakfast, went to work. Dhuhr time is due. Now I'm in doubt. Did I perform wudu or not? Not the other way around. Did I nullify my wudu? My wudu was certain in the first incident. Here, I'm not sure whether I performed wudu or not, which means that the default is that I'm not in the state of wudu. And I'm doubting whether I performed wudu or not. In this case, definitely I'm not in the state of wudu and I have to perform wudu. This is a usuli rule. And they call it al-yaqinu la yazulu bil-shak. Certainty is not removed by doubts. I am married and I keep getting these whispers. Did I divorce my wife? Was I intending to divorce her when I said I've had enough? These are doubts. What is certain? That I'm married. I have a paper proving it. I have kids proving it. The doubts is something that is not of a reality, that has no impact on what is default. Cast it away and throw it in the dustbin. Number 6, laughter. So people think that loud laughter, whether during prayer or outside of prayer, but during prayer might be a little bit more closer to logic, because they say, if I'm in prayer and I laugh loudly, this breaks my prayer. True? True. But does it impact my wudu? Most of the laymen say yes, it does, but there's no evidence backing it up, so it does not. And finally, washing the dead person. This was abrogated, and some people even go further and say that the hadith was not authentic. So the vast majority say that you don't have to perform wudu if you wash a dead corpse, and you don't have to perform wudu if you carry a dead man's corpse, because they report the hadith that if you wash a dead man's body, you have to perform ghusl yourself, and if you carry a dead man's body, you have to perform wudu, but this is not true. So when do we require to perform wudu? What are the deeds that require me to perform wudu? For example, now I'm giving you a lecture, I'm giving you a lesson. Do I have to perform wudu? The answer is maybe. So how do we know? If I say yes, bring me the evidence. If I say no, I don't have to bring evidence, simply because the default is I don't need wudu, and those who claim that I must perform wudu must bring me the authentic evidence to back it up. Otherwise, I would say, in order to use my mobile, I have to perform wudu. Why? So Simon says. So this is wrong.